Hello everyone, I am the Great Dane, and today I have 3 tales of history to regale you with. The first is about Napoleon Bonaparte, but not his battlefield feats, nor the controversy of his role in history. Rather, a deeply personal and wholesome, albeit slightly sad, account of his first love, and one you'll have to forgive my French with. Or more specifically, my pronunciation of French. The second covers the little-known Battle of Delium, an Athenian disaster during the Peloponnesian Wars, which involves history's first documented friendly fire incident, the first documented use of a flamethrower, and the philosopher Socrates. The final is the folktale of Gelert, the Hound of a Welsh prince, whose legend deals with loyalty and regret. Without further ado, let us begin. When discussing Napoleon's love life, you likely think of Empress Josephine, assuming you don't think of Deb and Trish. While his relationship with Josephine is quite intriguing and complicated, to say the least, few are aware of Napoleon's first love, Mademoiselle Caroline de Colombier. Their relationship was a simpler, purer one, the kind of idyllic young romance everyone imagines they will have, but few ever do. At just 17 years old, young Napoleon was a mere lieutenant, freshly graduated and far from the man of destiny he turned out to be. Stationed in Valence, he met Madame Gregor de Colombier, a wealthy, cultured woman who saw great potential in the boy, whom she maintained until her death around the time of the French Revolution was going to be a distinguished man in France's future. She helped shape the boy's future in many ways, granting him access and connections with her privileged place in society. For his part, the emperor never spoke with anything but the utmost gratitude for the role she played in his life. This includes introducing him to his first love. While visiting the Madame's estate outside the city in 1786, he met her daughter Caroline, whom he courted that summer. An excerpt from the Memorial of St. Helena describes the tryst as such. Napoleon conceived an attachment for Mademoiselle de Colombier, who, on her part, was not insensible to his merits. It was the first love of both, and it was that kind of love which might be expected to arise at their age and with their education. "We were the most innocent creatures imaginable," the emperor used to say. "We contrived little meetings together. I well remember one which took place on a midsummer morning, just as daylight began to dawn. It will scarcely be believed that all our happiness consisted in eating cherries together." The gaiety which Napoleon enjoyed at this period of his life excited great jealousy on the part of his fellow officers. They were displeased at seeing him absent himself so frequently from among them, though his doing so could be no reasonable ground of offense to them. Fortunately, the commandant had formed a just estimate of his character. He showed him great kindness, and afforded him the means of fulfilling his military duties, and at the same time of mingling in the pleasures of society. While there were indications he may propose to Caroline, it never materialized, and Napoleon's service moved him on to other places. She ended up marrying a much older retired captain, coinciding with Napoleon's Egyptian campaign, while Napoleon ended up marrying the aforementioned Josephine. However, the two remained in touch over the years and seemed to enjoy a genuine, if bittersweet, connection. The emperor offered her and her family many favors, and Madame Junot, Duchess de Abrantes, noted that in the emperor's court, Caroline kept her eyes fixed upon him with an attention that could only come from the heart. Later on, he would gift her an exquisitely carved ivory ring, which depicted country folk picking cherries, a clear reminiscence of what they used to do together. The ring remained a valuable heirloom in her family for the next 200 years, only sold in 2017 at an auction. While Napoleon and Josephine's relationship was marred by infidelity on both sides, it would seem nothing untoward occurred between him and Caroline. The two seemed content to honor their affections in a respectable fashion, old sweethearts simply appreciating what they had meant to one another once upon a time. It does make you wonder, though, if there was any longing or regret on either end, and what Napoleon's fate, and with his, the fate of history at large, would have been had he pursued her further when he was young. It's a thought we've all entertained on past relationships that failed to work out for whatever reasons, and that is what makes their relationship so special. It is an idealized romance, yet one we can all relate to. What do friendly fire, flamethrowers, and Socrates have in common? They were all part of the Delirium of Delium, a battle and subsequent siege of the Peloponnesian War that is largely glossed over, but shouldn't be. It is a battle of many military firsts. It includes an account of battlefield heroism for one of Western civilization's most recognizable names. While the Peloponnesian War is often simplified to Athens versus Sparta, each side had a multitude of allies, organized into the Delian and Peloponnesian leagues respectively. The Battle of Delium, occurring 7 years into the 27-year-long conflict, involved no Spartans at all. The Athenians were attempting to invade Boeotian lands, who were Spartan allies. The city of Delium was the Athenian foothold in Boeotia, but botched coordination between the two Athenian armies and a bit of espionage led them to put the rest of their plans on hold. The Boeotian commander, a Theban named Pagondas, decided to press the attack despite protests from his men, knowing that the Athenians would return if Delium was not captured. Hippocrates, the Athenian general present, gave him battle outside of Delium. The Theban had a few tricks up his sleeve though. Hoplite warfare at this time was a fairly simple affair. Although cavalry and light infantry existed, the bulk of the fighting was done by the hoplite phalanxes, who deployed and attacked in a standardized fashion. Pagondas broke the mold by organizing his Thebans, deployed on the right flank, into a depth of 25 ranks as opposed to the almost universal 8. This all but guaranteed victory on that flank, at the risk of shortening the overall battle line and exposing the left flank to envelopment. This is precisely what happened in the opening phase of the engagement. Although the Athenians were losing ground against the deeper Theban phalanx, they were able to circle around the Boeotians on the other flank, where only the Thespians stood their ground. However, the Athenians were not used to battles unfolding this way, and in the confusion, many of their hoplites began mistakenly fighting each other in history's first recorded friendly fire incident. Pagondas then ordered his cavalry to attack the disordered Athenians in another unorthodox move, fully turning the tables there. With both flanks now losing, the Athenians in the center also routed, and the victorious Boeotians chased their fleeing enemy until nightfall. It was during this fight that Socrates, fighting as a hoplite, recovered a bit of Athens' shame. Alcibiades relates how Socrates comported himself bravely. Furthermore, men, it was worthwhile to behold Socrates when the army retreated in flight from Delium, for I happened to be there on horseback and he was a hoplite. The soldiers were then en route, and while he and Laches were retreating together, I came upon them by chance, and as soon as I saw them, I urged the two of them to take heart, and I said I would not leave them behind. I had an even finer opportunity to observe Socrates there than I had at Potidæa, for I was less in fear because I was on horseback. First of all, how much more sensible he was than Laches. And secondly, it was my opinion, Aristophanes, and this point is yours, that walking there just as he does here in Athens, stalking like a pelican, his eyes darting from side to side, quietly on the lookout for friends and foes, he made it plain to everyone, even at a great distance, that if one touches this real man, he will defend himself vigorously. Consequently, he went away safely, both he and his comrade. For when you behave in war as he did, then they just about do not even touch you. Instead, they pursue those who turn in headlong flight. This is an interesting corroboration of one of the findings of the hoplite experiment Jonas and I recently covered on Barbarian Banter, where during the rout, men who turned to fight their pursuers had a better chance of survival than those who attempted to escape with haste. The Boeotians, seeing Socrates and his two comrades ready to give a fight, rather hunted easier prey. The efforts of Socrates were not enough to save the Athenian situation though. In the subsequent siege, the Boeotians unveiled yet another new machination of war, a flamethrower. Although the flamethrower is often credited to the Eastern Romans 1300 years later, this is the first documented use of one. And yes, it is not lost on me that many consider the Eastern Roman Empire more Greek than Roman, but that is a discussion beyond the scope of this tale. Thucydides describes the device as follows. They sawed in two and scooped out a great beam from end to end, and fitting it nicely together again like a pipe, hung by chains a cauldron at one extremity, with which communicated an iron tube projecting from the beam, which was itself in great part plated with iron. This they brought up from a distance upon carts to the part of the wall principally composed of vines and timber, and when it was near, inserted huge bellows into their end of the beam and blew with them. The blast, passing closely confined into the cauldron, which was filled with lighted coals, sulfur, and pitch, made a great blaze and set fire to the wall, which soon became untenable for its defenders, who left it and fled. And in this way the fort was taken. Of the garrison, some were killed and 200 made prisoners. Most of the rest got on board their ships and returned home. The Battle of Delium is fascinating, as although it gets little mention in pop history, it was a revolutionary battle in a few ways. Pocahontas really pioneered the use of legitimate, planned tactics here. Hoplite warfare was primarily a game of courage, cohesion, and endurance. But Pocahontas made deliberate choices to alter the flow of battle, and utilized his cavalry and light infantry in a more purposeful, decisive manner. This planning allowed him to outmaneuver and defeat the Athenians, who were expecting a straightforward fight. Ironically, the Thebans, Spartan allies here, would eventually fight against Spartan hegemony, dethroning them in turn with another unorthodox deployment at Mantinea. This is also the first case of friendly fire, at least that was actually recorded. Funnily enough, it involved no fire at all, as it was in close combat that the Athenians fought themselves. At this point, they did not have standardized shield patterns, and combined with the disorder caused by the irregular Boeotian deployment, the Athenian hoplites were unable to distinguish friend from foe. While it isn't clear how exactly this unfolded or how it ended, how terrible it must have felt to learn that you just fought and killed your own countrymen, Umbara style. Fire was literally involved in the siege though. It isn't discussed exactly how the Boeotians invented this device, or why it does not seem to have been replicated. But you can imagine how terrifying it would be to see a plume of fire spit up at you, especially if you had no frame of reference for such a weapon. In all that calamity though, at least Socrates comported himself well. We often forget that many ancient Greek figures like Socrates, known for their minds, were also soldiers, as most citizens were. Socrates was not just some smooth talker or brainiac, but a warrior and a competent, courageous, well-regarded one at that. It is hard for us to imagine a society where even philosophers and playwrights were expected to fight as a routine obligation. All of this makes Delium an underrated episode of ancient history. Dogs are often called a man's best friend, for good reason. They can be some of the most loyal, capable companions you can have. The Welsh folktale of Gelert is about one such steadfast hound, but if stories like Old Yeller make you cry, you might want to grab the tissues. Gelert was the dog of the medieval Welsh ruler Llewellyn. Returning home from a hunt, he finds his child's crib overturned and the baby missing. He sees Gelert, whose mouth is dripping with blood. The implication is obvious. The Welshman draws his sword in a rage and slays Gelert, who dies with a yelp. In the aftermath of the brutal scene, Llewellyn hears the cry of his child near the cradle and finds him unharmed, along with a dead wolf. The horror begins to dawn. What had actually happened is the wolf snuck into their home, and Gelert faithfully defended the baby. In the fight, Gelert killed the wolf. The blood was the beast's, not the baby's. This tragic realization washes over Llewellyn, who is overcome with remorse. He puts on a great burial ceremony for Gelert, honoring him as a hero, but he cannot escape his guilt. For the rest of his life, he hears the dog's dying yelp, and he never smiles again. Gelert's legend became associated with the town Bedgelert, which is said to have gotten its name from him, although it is actually named for an earlier Christian saint. The story has inspired and been referenced in other works, and it is not the only legend of its kind. There are regional variations on the trope as far as Malaysia, which developed independently, featuring different animals in place of the hound and the wolf. This is not surprising, as it touches on a set of universal human experiences. Literally, most people would jump to the same conclusion if they were in Llewellyn's shoes. Metaphorically, we have all acted emotionally in the heat of the moment before fully understanding a situation, lashing out unjustly. In matters involving those we trust, we are best advised to take a moment to understand the full truth, at least as well as we reasonably can before taking action. There are things that we say and do that cannot be taken back, and that can haunt you the rest of your life. Little ties the three tales I just told you, other than they are both marked by love and tragedy. Romantic love between Napoleon and Caroline, a couple who never would be. brotherly love on the battlefield between Socrates and his comrade, whose friendship carried them through the terrible bloodshed. The love between Gelert and his family, and the misfortune that befell both him and his master. There is one lesson that threads them all, though. Always do right by those you love. The world is a confusing, often hostile place, and real companionship, romantic, platonic, and familial, is a rare and sacred thing. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.